Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Always Do podcast. I am super excited about this one today. I feel like I've stumbled on something really fascinating, possibly life changing. So, I will admit this. Today's short little episode is a bit philosophical. I just finished the book. Actually, I finished it a while ago. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was written in 1974 and published then. And it's a philosophical book. I don't read too many of those, although I would like to read more of them. And I just went through it the other day and did my book summary. It took like a few days. I had to go back and like relearn a lot of the concepts from the book, but I'm glad that I did and spent so much time on it because a lot of those concepts are hitting me now, and we'll get into that now. And also, I just started this tiny little book. I've seen it going around on social media. It's like a social media book. It's 120 pages long. Don't believe everything you think. Nice, short, easy. But just in the first chapter alone, not even just the very beginning, I was able to draw some connections to what we're going to talk about today, and it was kind of mind blowing. So I'll start with a quote from that book, and the author is Joseph Nguyen, Nguyen. Quote, "Truth cannot be intellectualized. It can only be experienced. The truth lies within a feeling." And he goes on to say, "This is why the truth is always simple. If you want to find the truth, look for simplicity." And again, that just sounds so simple. And you might be like, Scott, how can you make this deep? All right, truth is simple, life is simple. But again, combining these two ideas, this philosophical idea of truth and simplicity and quality. So let me get into it. So the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is all about quality. What does quality mean? Where does it come from? What is good, right? And the whole premise of the book is trying to figure out what it is, right? Like, it's a fascinating question, actually. The more I think about it, is if I say what's quality, you're like, well, it's almost hard to define, right? Like, if I gave you two papers, somebody wrote a paper, and another student wrote another paper. This is kind of the example he gives. You can choose which one is higher quality, right? But you can't really define what that is. Sure, maybe like the syntax, it's written a little better, but it's not so much about that. You could have spelling mistakes and errors, but there's a feeling that you get that makes it better, right? Like, even if it was riddled with errors, we might be like, oh, it's still good quality stuff, right? And then this is the question I want to dive into today. So in the book, he says the problem is basically from the Greeks, like Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, thousands of years ago. They took this idea of good or quality. It's called arete, Arete. I don't know how to pronounce that. I should have figured that out. My fault. But basically, they took it and made it a thing, like a fixed thing. Like, you could look at something and be like, oh, this is quality, this is good because here. So in the example of a paper, it would be like, okay, this is good quality because it has spelling, it has good grammar, it has this. But there is the problem. If you could see what I'm getting at from the comment I made before, is that quality isn't always that. There are things you can't define, right? Like, you could read a paper that has lots of mistakes, some grammar, some spelling, whatever, it's not great, but it could still be powerful, and it could still be quality, and it could still be a quality argument. So basically, the idea is, I'm thinking, this is why I think this is such a crazy idea, is that our whole world for thousands of years we've all been taught to reason, to think. And that's phenomenal. It got us to where we are today. Our society is unbelievable because we have some of the greatest thinkers and problem solvers on the planet. Like, do this, solve this problem, and then you get this, right? Like, think of Elon Musk and rockets to space, right? Like, it's a problem, solution, amazing thinking. But what I'm seeing now is that we have been trained to not understand our feelings. Now, careful here, because I'll get to this point later, but I think we need to redefine feelings. Because I know when I say it, especially as a man, there's this thing we get, right? Like, we go right into like, crying or sadness or happiness or joy. And it's not necessarily that. It's just that feeling again. I'll use the two papers is like when you read it, you just feel one is better than the other, right? Like it's not this like, oh, happy, sad, joy. So I think there's something we'll get to in a few minutes, but about redefining feelings and what those mean. But let's go back to this original argument, right? We have been taught to reason and think since thousands of years. Nothing wrong with that. Even the author, Robert Pirsig, in the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, what a weird title, doesn't blame the Greeks. Nobody does. It got us to where we are. It's amazing. And then I've said this many times, and I didn't really realize it, but I was on the same kind of process of like people, I would argue against university or school because it wasn't for me. I wasn't built for that. I wasn't built to just go sit in a classroom and just do this. Oh, I lost it. And I always said this, school is not for career. School is for teaching you how to think. It's to think about thinking, right? It's to think about solving problems. It's teaching you how to use your brain to reason. Basically, everything you look at, every subject from mathematics to history to whatever. I mean, the creatives, you have some art and things like that, but everybody knows that like art and things like that are pushed down in schools, right? Because they try to let it in the system, but it's not really part of the system. So it's not a bad thing. Again, and I have this tattoo on my arm. It's like, don't think, do. And somebody asked me once what that meant, and I really couldn't explain it well, but finally it hit today that this is what I meant, is that for so long we're just taught to think and reason through things, and that's good and useful. And you have to decide when that is good and useful for you. But there's this part of feeling that we just kind of removed from society and life. And again, this isn't anything revolutionary, but it might be later because there's a little bit more I have connected to this. So basically our system is taught not to feel by simply not teaching feelings, right? Like we don't have classes about like interpreting feelings and using vocabulary to get really granular on like how we feel and what this is, like what is quality? Why do I feel this way about this paper versus this paper? Like we don't really have that in school. Sure, maybe some Socratic questioning and things like that, but that's again back to reason. It's logical. So from the time of the Greeks, truth and quality were combined into one thing, more or less. Really, truth is up here and quality or excellence is just below it, right? But they are fixed. Like truth is this is right, and quality is a fixed thing. Like again, back to the papers, I'll give another example. I was thinking about this with a pet. My dog's here. So with truth, I could go pet my dog and give them lots of loving and everything like that. And that's good quality. It's a thing. It's set, right? Everybody would agree on that, but it's not true because it's different. It's always moving and morphing and changing. And this is where it gets a little bit more philosophical. In this book also, this is why I love reading a lot, because you just draw a lot of connections. He says something along the lines of, he's just saying thank you to the reader. Like, thank you for your time and attention. It's the greatest gift you could give to me. And I hope you realize that it's also the greatest gift you give to yourself. And that got me to thinking, in the simplest way I can put it, the world is a mirror for everything. But most importantly, that underlying quality that nobody's talking about. So let me try to get into this and try to explain this as simply as possible. When we give our time and attention, we hear it, everybody hears it. I've repeated this over and over, time and attention. They're two most important things. There's even arguments of like, which one's more important? It's like the chicken and the egg. Like if you have all the time in the world, but you have zero awareness or attention, is the time worth it? Or is attention more important? So you have just a little bit of time and it doesn't matter, but as long as you're really paying attention. But I don't think anyone's really defining attention. Even I haven't done this of like, yes, we talk about awareness. Yes, we talk about being present. Yes, we talk about like being focused. And I kept thinking of this, and I'll use my dog as an example again. I could give my time, 5 minutes and my attention and awareness to kind of petting the dog. Right? Like I'm there, I'm focused, I'm feeling the senses, I can feel the fur, I'm giving him lovin's and everything like that. But the key is there's one little underlying level, and I think that is the quality and excellence. And the most important part of what I'm trying to get at here is how I give that kind of attention and loving and quality to the dog is exactly what will come back to me. And that's kind of the main point I want to really nail down on. As you can tell, I'm kind of working through this as well. But when I was reading, I was like, wow, this is fascinating because it seems so obvious, right? Like, we know what truth is. We know what quality is, but again, we're trying to redefine quality as like not a fixed thing. And that's another point of like quality morphs. It's different for everybody, right? Like, let's say we'll take $1, right? $1. If you give that to somebody, somebody might be like, okay, truthful, you gave it to them, and quality, like, oh, that's very nice of you, you gave some money, but it would be measured like, is it enough quality? Is it excellent enough on the amount, right? But that's not true. It's not fixed. It's that underlying layer, that feeling behind it. Like if I give $1 to somebody, and like I've done this really, if I traveled, I would come out of restaurants with like leftover food and I would always give it to somebody. There's one amazing example I'll never forget. I was out with a company that I worked for a couple of years ago. We went out to Seattle for a a company retreat type of thing, and we all got pizza at this one place, and there were a bunch of pizzas left over, and a bunch of slices. They came over and they're like, "Hey, do you guys want to take this away?" And everybody's like, "No, no, we're good. Take it away." And I was like, "Oh, actually, wait, I'll take it. I'll take it." And then everybody was like, "Well, don't take it because we're gonna go to this next place right after, and you don't want to be lugging a box of pizza around, and like it might go bad, blah blah blah." And I was like, this isn't for me. I was like, we're walking around Seattle and there are tons of homeless people. Sad but true. And my thought was to take that and give it to them, right? And I realized now that I'm drawing all these connections is that so many of us just don't have that process. Maybe even if we stop to think about it, everybody was like amazed, like, whoa, you think like that? I didn't even know I thought like that. That's my point of like, our attention is so important if you're paying attention to your attention. I'm going to confuse myself on this one, but I hope that makes sense to you. I want to kind of keep hashing this one out, but that's really the main point of what I want to get across today is that your time and attention isn't just the most important thing. It's the quality, the excellence, the arete. I got to figure out how to pronounce that. That started so long ago and that has disappeared. That is the most important thing. So again, if I'm back to the dog, giving time and attention, and I'm there, I'm present, I'm focused, but it's not really like meaningful. I could give time and attention to anybody. I could be sitting there. You're giving it to me now if you're listening to this, right? Maybe you're doing some stuff in the background or cleaning or whatever, just walking or going somewhere. So you're giving me like some time and attention, which is an amazing gift. But I think that's a huge takeaway as well is you're also giving that back to yourself. Whatever, not the time and attention, because we look at it that way, like, oh, I'm giving my attention to listening to this, so maybe I'll learn something in return. No, it's not that I'm talking about. It's that you're giving your time and attention of quality. And that is the quality that you'll get back in return. And I think of this so often of, let's say someone's talking, right? And you're really there, you're present, you're listening, you're asking good questions. But again, what is that underlying quality? Like the reason, not even the reason, because then you get back into logic. Like, what's that like feeling of listening? Are you really interested in that? In that case, this is where we get into that like moment. It is kind of hard to explain in words, is there's no words to describe it. Like someone's talking and you're just engaged. It's like you're almost in flow. It's kind of like that flow state, right? There is no judgment. There's no word for it. Like when you're in flow, you're really working on something, right? You're trying to be excellent. You're putting all of your time and attention into it. Is that there's no word. We have no word to really describe that. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is it's not just your time and attention. Because I think the more I think about this is that we're kind of getting away from time and attention, and we're trying to explain it as something, as a thing, as like a logic. Like I always think of the phone when I think of time and attention. So I take my phone and I'm just scrolling on it, right? So there's my time going away, and my attention, my focus is just going there. And I'm not saying, again, like, I think that's what most of the world and self-help space is saying, is that if you give your attention to your phone, that's what you'll get back in return, is like mindless matter and things like that. But it's, again, it's not that. It's the quality of that attention. Like, you're mindless. So what you get back into your life is mindless situations, mindless thought, mindless feelings. Like, that becomes a mirror. That gift of how you give something is what is so important. And that was the kind of final thing that I had here, was the key that brings it all together is it doesn't matter what you give, like your time and attention. Okay, it does matter. But like I said, if you give $1, that doesn't matter. It's how you give it. And I was thinking this when I was taking my notes. If you think of Tony Robbins and things like that, he says, if you want to be rich, and I've read this in so many books, you give, right? You give, and you'll get back. And this kind of goes into like the law of reciprocity and maybe the law of attraction, things like that. But I don't think that's it. Again, this is the point of this. And I think I stumbled. I'm so happy, at least for myself on this one, is that there's that underlying thing of giving, the why almost of like, the sad part is most people, the why would be I'm giving so later I could get something back. But then that's the point. It's, you might get something back, but the quality won't be there, right? Like, let's say I give $1 million to a charity. I'll get all that like joy and happiness and peace back only if I do it for no other reason than just for quality. Like, not, there's nothing there, right? There's no reason, there's no logic, there's nothing. Even a true story, the other day where I'm living, it's snowing, and I didn't even think. I was snow plowing the snow, and I just went and did 2 other driveways. I didn't even think. One of the ladies called me the other day, or yesterday, and she was like, oh, thank you for doing that. I was like, oh, I forgot I even did that. There was no reason. I didn't know anyone was home. Nobody's watching. I just went and did it, and then I went home, and that was it, done. There was no reason behind it. I think I say that a lot. I think we all do. There is no reason. There's no logic behind some of the things that we do. And when you are giving your time, okay, final takeaway, because I realize I'm rambling because I'm also thinking through this. But final takeaway, it's about the quality behind your time and attention that matters the most. And there is no reason behind that. So don't think about it now where you're like, oh, my time and attention matters. So if I'm going to be on the phone, go in really focused with a purpose or a reason to learn something. No. This is, again, where it gets philosophical. There is none of that. It's that whatever that feeling is, you need to see whatever that is for you. Sometimes when I go on my phone, I have no idea what that feeling is, what I'm looking for, searching for, or what makes me do that. Or when I read now, I pay attention to that and how I get excited to take notes and then do things like this and connect the dots and work out processes. So find that quality. And that was something, again, I learned from my ayahuasca thing. That was the number one takeaway. Well, 2 of them. Love myself a little bit more, but maybe not so much. I wrote an article about that. But the other takeaway was feel. I forgot how to feel. And I think so many of us have. And again, try to wrap it up here, is this idea of feelings, right? And for me, I'm talking to myself here, is that I've always, every time I hear the word, I think of like the feminine energy, like I need to get in touch with my feelings and sadness, and I need to be emotional. It's not that. It's not, right? Like, when I'm reading this book, I'm putting the word of excitement to it. When I'm like reading and then I get excited to go make the video, I'm putting the word excitement to it, but it's just whatever that is in there. And I think so many of us have just lost touch with whatever that is. We have no idea. I know for me personally, I'm so proud of like my brain, and I love thinking through things and problems and solutions. But I realized the last couple of weeks, again, after the ayahuasca trip and then all of this, it all like comes together of like, whoa, I really forgot how to feel, and not just have emotions, but to understand that it is that feeling behind everything that I do. And the two most important things are that the time and attention. So there is no reason for making this video, right? Like it's just, again, so complex. At least it's philosophical, but it's just excellent. I just want to make a good thing because it feels right. It's truth. It's my truth of like making this feels good, and that's it. There's no reason, there's no trying to get followers, people to listen to this or anything, although those things are nice, but I think that's just what we're so caught up in. Okay, so I'll leave it at this. The key that brings us all together, it doesn't matter what you give as far as your time and attention goes. It's how you give it. It's the quality behind the giving of your time and attention. So start focusing on that extra layer. And then some solutions I was thinking of, we need to redefine feelings, like I said, and then quality and excellence. That is up to you. It's always morphing and changing. I think that's an important takeaway that I got, at least from that book, Zen and the Art. It's never a thing. It always morphs and changes like in nature, and it depends on your past and your experiences and your knowledge and your situation that you're in. Like if I give $1, maybe I might be like, it's not great quality. I probably could have done better, right? Like you'll know that. But somebody who doesn't have much money, who gives it to, you see poor people who give money to other people even though they're poor. I've seen this, like poor people with nothing will give things away. There is the quality. And actually in the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, he says that the people like that are looked at as insane and crazy because they're outside of what is accepted, right? Like the truth. But they don't, maybe some people who don't have anything just see quality. So I guess there's also a balance, right? Like there's a balance between the quality and the feeling and then the reason and the truth. So finding that balance of what that is, right? Like if you don't just go chasing quality all the time, pleasure, I've done that in life, terrible outcome, don't do that. It ends up empty, right? But there's also truth and reason, and you need to find that balance. And I would say you define your own truths, and you also define your own quality, right? And it's always morphing and changing. And the final takeaway here is that I want to say is the world is a mirror, not to your time and attention, but to the quality behind your time and attention. I hope that helps truly. Have a wonderful day.